This is something that happened to me when I was a kid. A long, long, long time ago. It was a time when nuns still taught in schools and carried thick wooden rulers to discipline little troublemakers like me. A time when it was more common for a household to have a radio than a TV set, and when the idea of colored TV was completely unthinkable. I guess, in the grand scheme of things, the 1960s didn't happen that long ago, but considering just how much the world has changed, sometimes it feels like my childhood happened in a completely different universe. It feels incredibly and abnormally distant. I've never told this story to anyone, not to my parents, for reasons that'll become obvious when I tell this story to you, and not to my friends, because I was too freaked out. Over the years, I just kind of forgot about it, but now I want to get it off my chest. It was early February. I remember that much because the Bonhomme Carnival, the mascot of the biggest winter festival of the region, had stopped by my school to hand out candies and announce the coming festivities. My mom had promised to take my brother and I to the festival that weekend if we behaved. We'd just gotten a new TV set, and let me tell you, it was impressive. TVs back then weren't the flimsy little things we have today. TVs were pieces of furniture. They were encased in wood and had a tuner at the front. Where I lived, in Quebec City, you basically got two channels. A French news channel and some kind of English broadcasting channel that we didn't watch because, well, we didn't speak English. Sometimes, we'd be able to catch a third channel if we angled the antenna just right, but we could barely make out what was being said. I think it was a community channel. Not sure. Point being, the only channel we watched, and were able to capture well, was a French channel. My uncle had come over that night, with promises of watching the first hockey game on our new TV. I sat down on the couch, but my mom walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Time for bed," she said sternly. "But," I began. Her eyes shot daggers at me. I lowered my head and got up. "Yes, ma'am." Again, this was a different time. If I'd have argued with her, I would have gotten into big trouble. Not, "I'm taking your phone away for a day" kind of trouble. I'm talking, "I've got a wooden spoon and I'm ready to whoop your butt so hard you won't sit for a week" kind of trouble. I climbed up the stairs, walked into my room, and sighed as I jumped in bed. I remember thinking how unfair it was that everyone was going to get to watch the game without me. I could hear my parents and uncle popping open beer bottles and chatting gleefully as they waited for the game to start. There was no way I was going to sit back and let them have all the fun. I did what any kid would do in that situation. I crawled out of bed and opened my bedroom door quietly. They didn't hear me. I tiptoed down the hall and towards the stairs. From my angle, they couldn't see me, but I couldn't see the TV. There was no point in doing this if I couldn't see the game with my own eyes. I might as well have just turned on my radio. No, I was determined to watch my favorite players moving and gliding across the screen. I steadied myself and pushed closer to the stairs, peeking out from between the top two rails. Bingo. I was able to see the top right quadrant of the screen. It was nowhere near perfect, but to see more I'd have to sit on the stairs. And then, I risked getting caught. I saw my parents struggling with the tuner. They turned it left and right, wiggled the antenna, and fiddled with the tuner again. The game had already started by the time they finally got a signal. Strange thing was, I could tell that they were on that third channel, the one that never came through. It seemed fine this time, though. I watched, squinting as the players flew by. I couldn't quite see either of the team logos from where I sat. As far as I could tell, one of them looked like a ram and the other one was some sort of star. Their distant shapes didn't resemble any of the current NHL teams. If they were, I would have recognized them in a heartbeat. I had a poster of all the logos on my wall. I was an avid hockey fan, and there was no way 2 new teams could have been formed without my knowledge, so I figured my parents might have been watching a local team or something. It didn't matter. I mean, hockey is hockey, right? Even if you're not watching your home team, it's still fun. The announcer's voice came on, crackled and distorted. He narrated the game, helping to fill in the gaps for anything I wasn't able to see on my quadrant of the screen. For the first period, everything was pretty normal, but at the start of the second period, it got weird. The announcer's voice became a little more rigid. He sounded stressed. I wondered if I'd missed something. I decided I'd risk going down one step. I mean, my parents and my uncle were enthralled at this point, eyes locked on the screen, and they wouldn't turn around anytime soon. I slowly inched closer to the step, staying low to the ground, when suddenly... "What are you doing, Richard?" whispered my brother. I jumped, but managed not to hit anything. I shushed him, shooting a glare in his direction. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, ignoring the fact that neither was I. "You have to understand, if I got caught, I'd be in trouble. If we got caught, which, let's face it, was very likely because little kids like Steve can't keep their stupid mouths shut for 2 seconds, then I'd be in twice as much trouble, because somehow my parents would blame my brother being up on me. So I told him to go back to bed, and thankfully, he did. I still had my back turned, watching my brother walk away, when I heard my parents and uncle gasp. It wasn't the anticipatory gasp of a puck narrowly missing the goal. It was a gasp of disbelief. Maybe a fight had broken out? I hurried to my spot at the top of the stairs and stared down toward the living room. I could barely hear the announcer through intermittent static. I'd catch little words here and there, like, "another bite," "oh God," and "it's getting bigger." All I could see from my angle was an empty corner of the rink and the bleachers behind it. The audience was fleeing and tripping on the cement stairs. I could see people climbing over one another trying to escape. I could hear their screams. Distant screams that just barely managed to penetrate the announcer's sound booth, like a haunting whisper on the airwaves. Then something round tumbled across the ice. A head. My uncle shuffled to his feet. "Shut it off." Mom was murmuring God's prayer. Dad dropped his bottle of beer, and it spun in a semicircle on the floor, foamy liquid spilling from the top. My uncle twisted the tuner in every direction, but the image remained. By now, the announcer was screaming. Even if I couldn't see the color, I knew. I knew when the liquid splattered across the screen that it was blood. And with a loud burst of static, the image faded. Sweating and breathing heavily, I rushed back to my bedroom. I could feel myself shaking as I tunneled underneath my blanket, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I don't know what I was more afraid of. What I'd seen on the television, or my parents checking up on me and seeing the state I was in. Did they seem disturbed by what was on the television? Yes, but what if it was just a stupid show? If they saw how scared I got, they'd never let me watch TV. I had to pretend like nothing happened. Pretend I was fast asleep. Make sure they never found out. I don't know exactly what it was my parents saw that night. I was only able to catch a glimpse of it myself, but I know it shook them to their core. The next morning, they were acting really weird. Shifty. Tense. Like they were trying to hide something. You could tell they were really anxious. Maybe they thought it was none of my business, or maybe they didn't want to scare me. As much as I wanted to know, I didn't ask them what happened. I knew already, and if I asked, they'd know I disobeyed them. So I kept quiet. The TV was gone by the time I came home from school. Honestly, I'm not sure why I thought about this again today. I wasn't channel surfing in the middle of the night and came across the mysterious channel with another spooky hockey game. This is just something that's been in the back of my head on and off for years now, and I thought I'd share it. I was curious enough to do a bit of research online on the hockey teams, but I couldn't find anything. I mean, this happened in the 60s, and they didn't keep great records back then. Has anyone here heard about or seen this game? It must have made the news somewhere. If you have any information, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.